Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
Is that the solution for the frustration? Is to be in your integrity?
Yes.
All
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Always be in your integrity. And in your integrity, you understand that it is what it is. Energy is until it's not, right? Energy is flowing into your body until it stops flowing because it becomes so clogged up, and then disease begins, right? So be in your integrity. When somebody's saying something that you totally disagree with, don't sit in your mind and go, what an idiot, right? Just say, wow, they're really convicted on how they feel. That's amazing. Bless them in their thoughts. Don't be judgmental in their thoughts. Bless them for having the power to feel the way they feel, even if it's different from you.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.
Healing within and adventure inside. Thank you so much for being a part of today's program. I have an awesome guest. We've been visiting a little bit before we started the recording, and happy to say we're both upstate New Yorkers, although he tells me I come from a suburb of his in Buffalo, New York, but I'll take it. I'm happy to have him here. So I'd like to introduce you to Joe McQuillen. And Joe's been married to his wife, Sally, for 30 years and is the father of 3 children. One of his sons is now on the other side. Joe was the youngest of 10 children born into an Irish Catholic family. Although he has had 2 successful careers, Joe's at heart a blue-collar kid from Buffalo, New York. Joe is 36 years sober and a member of AA, a fact that has helped him get close to God and helped to carry him through the dark times after Chris's crossing. I'm going to stop there because I want to hear your words. What took place at that point in
it's
your
funny.
life?
I mean, just hearing you read that, so I know Chris is here, brought emotions way to the surface. So, let's start with the fact that I'm an ordinary guy on this amazing journey, right? And it started off tragically. In January 3rd, 2016, Chris was home from college and for Christmas break, and he and a dozen friends decided to meet at one of their parents' lake house up in Lake Beulah, Wisconsin, small little lake up there. And go up there in the afternoon, kick up their heels, shoot pool, drink a dozen of them, spend the night, get up and come home. And Sunday we were supposed to watch the Bills game. And then Monday he was going back to school. And, I was waiting for him to come home. Around 11 o'clock, I got a text from 11:30, actually, one of his friends that said, Mr. McHugh, Chris, and 3 friends are missing, And so I grabbed the Labrador and grabbed a hunting coat and jumped in the Jeep and started heading up. And halfway up, I got a call from the uncle who lived in the area and said, hey, Mr. McQuillen, It's no longer a search, but the recovery. All 4 boys had drowned that were missing. And it turned out they were doing what kids do, drinking, frolicking, and 3:00 in the morning, they come back from a little tavern, little local Wisconsin tavern, came back to the house, shot pool, ping pong, big home. And then Chris and a couple of guys went outside and bumped into a boathouse, and there was canoes in there, and 4 of them jumped in a 3-man canoe with layered clothing, a snoot full of alcohol, and untied Timberland boots, which comes into play later on, and partially frozen lake, and they paddled out on it, and none of them made it back. Halfway up, I had it came to me 16 years later, on a whim, and you look at me, I have a brush cut and a bent nose, and I don't look like the kind of guy, hung on my hockey skates 2 years ago. I don't look like the kind of guy that delved into the metaphysical. But 15 years before, on a whim, or what I thought was a whim, I had seen a medium, and the reading was mundane until we got to the very end. And she said, "Your dad's here, and he's holding a caboose and telling you railroad." Now you can see over my shoulder, there's a bookcase, and on top is a railroad lantern. My dad spent 40 years on the railroad. All the boys worked on the railroad in college. I worked on the railroad and stayed on as a brakeman. My uncle was a railroader. My grandfather was a railroader. We were a railroad family. That's who we were. So when he said railroad, I got it. The old man was not verbose. Nickname on the railroad was Iron Joe. Didn't talk a lot. But when he said something, he meant it. So
Yeah.
I knew that if my old man was somewhere accessible, then my son was with him. And I just had to do the footwork, and I had to figure it out. And that started my search. That's what started that.
Wow. How soon was it before you began feeling Chris, that you could have conversations or knew that he was with you?
Okay, so that's a great question. So there's a difference between believing and knowing, and I'll get you there. So literally the day after Chris had drowned, I had come back I had gone up to Wisconsin. I had waited up there. I mean, I'm right now I can envision just walking in that door, looking out the picture window and seeing rescue boats and lights and rescue divers and all that stuff. People in corners crying right in the house, cops running around, and man, it takes me right back to that. So, there was a whole lot of details to figure out, grave sites and informing people, calling his mom for criminy sakes, so I had a lot of responsibilities to, it'd been great just to fold up in a little ball and cry. Right. So, the next day I actually reached out to that medium from 16 years ago she had relocated, and I tracked her down to Arizona, and she said, "It's a little early, but let's give it a shot." And Chris came through and took responsibility for his death and said there was a learning curve, and he was in the process of working through some stuff, and he described what happened to her, and she, I didn't tell her what happened, and it was pretty apparent that she was getting messages from somebody that knew, right, and it was him, and so I was very grateful. I at that point knew he was communicating with her, but I didn't know how to feel him then, right? Later on I started learning how to feel him. 6 months into the process, I had talked to her a couple of times, and like a good medium, she's like, "We can't do this every day. He's got things to do, and you've got things to do.
You've got things to do.
You got to grow and heal." And, so I wanted to look into the eye of a medium who was looking at my son, right? I believed it now pretty with my heart and soul. Yeah. So Bob Olson wrote a great book about the other side. He was a private eye in LA. And I think he actually started the book to try to disprove it, and ended up being a huge convert, writing a great book, Bob Olson. And it turns out, just coincidentally, I didn't realize it was a website with he had a evaluation of mediums in your area, and he rated them. And he rated this guy, Andrew Anderson, very high. And he was about 30 minutes from me in the western suburbs. And so I made an appointment and knew that I'm an exit strategy, guys. I'm an Irish goodbye. When I leave a party, nobody knows I'm gone. I just go. Yeah. And so I always have an exit strategy, a plan B. And so I called him, made an appointment. All he had was my cell phone and my first name. And and went home. And as the day came up the next day, I did two things. I had ordered shamrock seeds from Amazon. Now, I had told you right before we started talking that in typical McQuillen fashion, I was not happy once the snow melted in 2016 that he was buried next to another couple. It looked like he was their kid, and I was livid. That was my son. And unfortunately, it was, they had to wait till the ground to soften to put the headstone, the marker.
Right.
So I had to move over one grave, and I'll occupy the grave he was in. That's mine. And we moved him over. And I'm really, that was one of my first, I would say, instincts from spirit to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And as foolish as it sounded to spend that kind of money, just shut up and do it. And it made all the difference in my life. It was a fabulous idea, and I'm so glad I did it.
Oh yeah.
I'm grateful for that. I'm there all the time. I was there yesterday cleaning up, and it's not like I'm an old man, with feeding pigeons in the park. I go there, I'm having a cigar, usually in my Labrador, and I got a folding chair, Buffalo Bill's folding chair, by the way, and sit there and just connect with him, So, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but so I and the second thing I did before I met Andrew is I went and I have a leather bracelet that he gave me.
Oh yeah.
When he was 5 and we were in Disney World. It said Dad on it. And I had put that in a dresser drawer, and I hadn't looked at it in 16 years. And just on a whim, I put that on, and like this, under a cuff,
Yep.
So stopped at the grave because the ground, he had been reinterred. The ground was soft, and I could plant those shamrock seeds that I had gotten from Amazon. And I had the bracelet on. I went out to Hoffman Estates, where Andrew was or is to this day, and had a meeting with him, and wanted to see a picture of Chris and described his personality and explained that Chris was, fun loving and a party boy, but there was a dark side. And we worried about depression and alcohol and, addiction, right? And all that stuff. And so there was a dark side that scared us, but he was a fun, sweet, there were 2,000 kids at his wake, not kids, people.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
2,000, and amazing kid. And so I went, I saw Andrew, and Andrew looked at me and said, he said, your son's here. He's beautiful. He looks like Brad Pitt. I go, yeah, he is. He says, kind of making fun of your haircut. I said, that's my son. He's a little bit of a ball buster, but yeah. And he said, Chris acknowledges that you're wearing the bracelet he gave you and that you were at his grave today planting something. That's the moment, Patty. Everybody has this aha moment, right? When it went from I believe to I know. That was it. That was it.
Yep.
That was it. I knew at that point that Christopher was on the other side, was connecting, was around me. It wasn't my imagination, and that spurred me to keep going in that direction.
Yeah.
So,
it's such a strong feeling,
It was like a wave comes over you, and you can't. If you're standing in the Finger Lakes and a wave comes over you, you can't deny it came over you, right? No. You're wet, you're dripping wet. The tide hit you.
Yeah, and I can remember my great grandmother. She and I were very close, and she passed when I was 7. And when I got into my teens, I'd be, making lunch or whatever, and she'd say to me, "Child, you come to me." And I'd stop what I was doing. Even when I lived in Michigan, I'd stop what I was doing, jump on a plane, go back home, go sit by her headstone and go, "What?" Yeah. And she'd say, "Child, you don't know everything yet." And I'm like, well, okay. But when she called, it was impossible not to go.
That's so absolutely spot on. People can deny it, and then they get stuck, right? Yeah. Because you're either in or you're not, right? Jump in, man, and the water's fine, So like that, I had an opportunity with. Well, let me finish. So Andrew at that point was amazing. We've continued a relationship. I see him occasionally. I go to spirit circles. I don't love spirit circles, but I love Andrew, right? And but it's funny. Chris had come through and chided me and would say from the other side, "You're not an expert, Pop. Keep learning." It's like, okay, buddy. Just when I think like I'm the guy, right? I'm the man.
Yep.
And I was one time I went to visit my sister. I was Christopher's godmother, and they were real close, and he adored her. She adored him, like, and she was like that with me. we were real special in our lives. And she was a real source of love for both of us, and individually, and she would set other people on fire for us. And so one thing I recall is before she transitioned, I was with her a couple of days before she transitioned. She'd been in Naples, Florida, and I just spent 2 months there this year and last year. Did a lot of writing and connecting. And she said, honey, she called me Joey. She goes, Joey, you gave me the greatest gift. I read your book and I'm not afraid to die. And to be able to give somebody that you love that much something that she was able to take to the other side. And a second part of that story was a year later, by the way, I was seeing a different medium. And I love seeing different mediums and where they're coming from. And her name is Jill Nicole, lovely gal, on my birthday, which was January 9th. So this is January 9th, 2017. So it's a year after Christopher transitioned, or I'm sorry, it was January 9th, 2020, because it was a year after Marcia transitioned. And she said, your son's here. But so there's a very pretty woman, short hair, glasses, which is how she looked when she taught high school, when she was younger, which makes sense. And she said to tell you, she's calling you Joey and says to tell you, thanks for the greatest gift. Now, how do you, I hadn't written that yet. In fact, that segment goes in book 3 because it's in 2019 and that's when it were 2020 and that's when that's coming out.
Wow.
So, you look and you just say, yeah, that's why they're called evidential mediums, right? Because they give you evidence that they're bringing a message across,
Exactly.
So Christopher told me, don't worry, Pop, when Marcia crosses, I'll be there. She won't be alone. She won't be afraid.
Yeah.
And after she transitioned, it's funny, another wonderful medium, Tony texted me and when Marcia transitioned and said, Marcia's sending me messages to tell you, just to know it's her. She's saying Aldo's, Virginia, and she loves this black shirt Christopher's wearing. And what that was is Marcia had just transitioned. Aldo's was the restaurant that I had made arrangements to have a dinner for her after the celebration of her life. Nobody could get in. I went and saw the maitre d'. It was her favorite restaurant, got it handled. She raised her kids in Virginia. And then my wife and daughter were putting a collage of pictures together.
Yeah.
And there was a picture of Christopher and Marcia at one of the family events. And Christopher was wearing my Tommy Bahama black shirt.
Yeah.
And she said, I liked Christopher in the black shirt. And once again, it was just a feeling in the soul that she's okay.
Yeah.
So when Christopher, after she transitioned, Chris said, Dad, I told you we'd be there. So was Jerry, Bobby, Billy, Pat. They were all there for her. He said, but then she had to go somewhere, like a spa. Mm-hmm. And when she came back, she was younger than when I remember when I was a kid.
Oh,
so it took me a while to figure that out, which was that she died of cancer on her own way, on her own, like everything she did in her life, she did it on her path. So she died of cancer. And even though the cancer stayed with her body on this side, the trauma crossed with her. So she had to go somewhere. And what a loving way to put it, like a spa.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about it feeling harsh, right? Like a spa.
Right.
And she came back and joined the group younger and free of that trauma, right? I get it. I get to see what the other side looks like.
That's
man.
right. I mean, what I love about what you're saying in everything is there are mediums out there who are accurate. And it's finding the one who has the right vibration to be able to give you specific information, not nebulous little stuff, but true information that only you would know. And specific. I mean, that's so wonderful and amazing that you've been able to find them and then develop this relationship, different relationship with Christopher,
right?
And yet very similar. What was Christopher the push to write your first book, or did you decide to write the first book, or was Chris telling you it was time to get that book out?
Like most things, like the event from 16 years before when I had seen a medium, I thought I was making decisions on my own. And it was only later on that I looked at that spirit wanted me to see somebody. So I had that information 16 years later when I needed it. So I had no intention of writing a book. I was keeping copious notes, which is a good term for a blue collar kid from Buffalo, right? Keeping copious notes of mediums, sessions. I started out writing notes, and then I ended up on iPhones or with a recorder recording them all. So and then I could transcribe them. So I had those. And then I'll tell you what happened is on the anniversary of his transitioning, his crossing, so January 3rd, 2017, I had gotten used to getting up at 3:00 in the morning and coming into this office and aligning my chakras, lighting sage, candles, all the things I'm doing. I don't look like a guy that would align his chakras, and meditating and just feeling him around me. And I loved it. But on this date, 12 months after he had transitioned, 3:00 in the morning, I'm sitting in the office and I started getting a download from him. And it said, "Hey, Pop, you're not going to believe it. This place is friggin' amazing. The colors, the warmth." He said, "The air is warm and beautiful. It's like love air, and I just started writing. Now, I wasn't sure I had gone off the reservation at this point, Patty. I was not really sure what the heck was going on. Right. But I kind of went on faith and just kept writing.
Yeah.
And that still to this day happens a couple times a month. It happened. I had on 5/1, Christopher had come through and was talking about our Labrador that's about to transition and that she's already partially there,
Yeah.
So I have all these books, and now I would write all these notes and I would put them in a file folder according to date, and figured someday I'm going to be sitting on a rocking chair, smoking a cigar, reviewing these notes. And the following year, so now this is 18. Sally was, Sally. So I just started writing this, and by the way, that day, here's how I knew it wasn't me sending these messages. I was angry at the kid whose family owned the lake house, permissive, wealthy. I had to blame somebody, right? Wasn't their fault, but I wanted to blame some. I'm Irish. Somebody's got to be to blame, right? I want to hold a grudge, and so this first meeting, he said, "Dad, you got to let go of the resentment. I love Scotty. He loved me. We were pals. Wasn't his fault, but you got to let go." And I said, "Okay, sure, Chris, for you, anything, I'll let go of the resentment."
Yeah.
And figure, when am I ever going to see this kid again? Right? No problem.
Right.
12 hours later, I get a text from his buddies, college friends who are still in my life, his family. They're fraternity buddies and gals. And they just had an event at his birthday, had 40 kids show up and all wearing Chris McHugh t-shirts.
Right.
Wonderful. And they are like family, these boys and girls to me. And I go to their weddings, or we go to their weddings. And so I get a text. Sally and I were going to meet at the grave at dusk and let go a Chinese lantern. And I got a text from one of his buddies, Mr. McHugh. "A few of us are going to get together at the grave at 3:30. Can you join us?" I said, "Sure." Grab the dog, grab some cigars and a hockey cooler, and headed out there. And as I pulled in, there were 40 kids spontaneously at his grave.
Wow.
Celebrating him with Land Shark beer and Stellas and by the way, that's a tradition we do January 3rd to this day. Every year, even during COVID, I had a tent put up with heaters, and we still did it. And
Still did.
And so that's what I started keeping those notes.
Yeah.
So in February, April, my nephew in 17, I'd been keeping notes, and then these notes, I'd heard my wife and her brother talking about Chris when he was little, how he used to play hide and seek, and I thought, I just got to find him and I got to write about it. I turned around, walked to my office, started writing the book. It was never my intention. And by the way, they're both, and I say this with all humility, Patty, they're phenomenal books. They're important books. One's My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, and the others, We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. And they're both available on Amazon. And the nice thing is it's kind of a how-to for dummies, right? Boots on the ground, solid. You're not going to get confused by how it's read. It's kind of like sitting down with somebody and them telling you a story. So
having this wonderful conversation. Yeah.
Right? That's what they are.
Yeah.
And Chris said, you got to write this book, Pop, because people will take it from you. They'll believe it if you say it.
Yeah.
And he said, especially you got to get through to dads who think they're supposed to suck it up.
Right.
So I remember seeing Thomas John a couple years ago in 18, and he's and one-on-one, and it was a phenomenal interview. And he said, do you go to the grave a lot? I go, yeah. He was like recently. I said, yeah, yesterday. He said, I tell most parents, there's kids, tell them, don't go there. But I'm going to tell you, keep going there. It's a good place for you too. You connect. I know he doesn't live there. He meets me there. We connect.
Right.
Right. So that's, I know where I can call him and get this information. So he wanted me to put this out. He wants me to get this information across. And he thinks that I'm a good ambassador. So Thomas John looked at me and goes, you writing a book? I go, yeah. He said, Chris says, get going. I go, dude, I'm paddling as fast as I can, but he's still, when I take it easier, and it's funny, sometimes he's just sweet and says, Pop, it'll get done, and sometimes he pushes me. It depends what my spirit needs.
Yeah. I mean, what an amazing gift, because you are you. I mean, I've got the Irish Catholic and the mix on my mother's side of the family.
Yeah.
So I know how strong the Irish Catholic can be, but to have such messages from him and information and security.
I know that I'm going. I know. He said to me, Pop, your world's good. It's good. It's a good place. He said, it's like football camp. And I played ball when I was in school. He said, it's like football camp. He said, you're there with your friends, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of fun, competition, but it's grueling and it's hot and it's hard and it's physically challenging and there's injuries. He said, but on the whole, it's a great journey. He said, that's your side. He said, my side is like a beach bungalow in Maui. He said, you're going to love it. So, when, the thing is, this is with all my heart and soul. I'm telling you, Patti. I am in no hurry to leave. I have books to write, people to talk to. I still have adult kids to father and a beautiful partner and my wife, and send my dog pretty soon off to the other side with Chris, 14 and a half year old Labrador. But if I got the tapped on the shoulder and said, pal, time to go.
Yep.
I'm okay because I know what's next. I get to be with my son on the other side again.
Yeah. You get that next adventure. And that's what I've told my children is, love it here. But when I'm ready to go, when I'm being called back there, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be an awesome adventure. I can't wait to see what it's like.
It's like some people are just holding on too tight, right?
They are.
Especially this COVID thing. You see people freaking out. It's like, folks, lighten up. You're leaving Earth School, but it'll be all right. And you're going to look back maybe and say, holy cow, what was I scared of?
Yeah. I think we all will. Good question for you though. Does your wife or your other children have conversations with Christopher? Are they able to feel him at least or know?
Both. That's a great question. And Sally feels him a lot. I believe, like you said, I've got this amazing gift. But I think that comes with a caveat, which is I've got to give it away to keep it, right? I've got to talk to you and your audience and talk to parents who've lost kids or people who've lost significant others, just to let them know that they're not gone. Like as Susan Giesman says, still right here.
Yep.
So Sally feels them, knows she's around. I think at first she was a little jealous that I got the visits, but I think it's because I'm a really good ambassador. Plus, I think it's a little deeper. I think Chris and I were twin flames. I don't believe in soulmates. I think soulmates is a hallmark term, right? But I think Chris and I were so close that I've known we had gone through past lives. I mean, look at me talking about past lives. And that's going to be a big part of the third book, by the way, Past Life Regression.
I was going to ask you about that third book. Like, are you working on it?
Oh, yeah. I'm leisurely working on it, which is really fun right now. You know? And it really is fun. The pressure's off. But it's it's kind of like air to breathe for me, Patti. I mean, it's funny. Here's how the title of the second book came out. And I was finishing the first book and I was feeling a little melancholy. Well, first of all, the first book, I had no idea how was it going to get it published. Do you get an agent? What, I started meeting with other authors,
Sure.
and they were seeming a little daunting. And so I was a little worried about it. And second book I wanted, once, I'd gone through it. I'd gone through the PR, I'd gone through interviews and book signings, and it's a wonderful experience,
Right.
And so that kind of was taken out of the equation. But I was finishing the first book and I was feeling melancholy, and I was worried that it was going to hurt the connection that he and I had once the project was over, right? Like maybe he doesn't need to be around this old man anymore, right? So I was nervous about it. So I had, and obviously he knew it, and said, we're not done yet, Pop. We'll be doing this until you cross.
Until you come over to me. Yeah.
That's what he said. Until
That's
you
right.
cross. So all of a sudden it was like, okay, we got this. I can finish this book. I can talk to people. I can start another one, and he's going to be with me the entire time. And he said to me one time, he said, Pop, I'm moving up in levels over there. And he said, but it's like me calling you from Arizona or California, long distance. Doesn't matter. It's not going to affect our connection.
Right.
So, he knows the old man's worried about losing touch, and reassures me all the time.
Isn't that wonderful to know? I mean, to know it, not just guess at it, but to know it.
Or think it, or feel it, or believe it.
Exactly.
I
You know it. You know it. Yeah. That's so wonderful. So let's go over the topics or the book titles again, because, I have a lot of clients who have lost their children or spouse, whatever. I think this book, especially a few of them who have recently lost their children or had their children transition, I think this would be great. So
I do too.
Title of the books.
My Search for Christopher on the Other Side is the first one.
Yep.
And then the other ones, We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side. They're both on Amazon. They're on Kindle, regular book. They're on Audible. And I'm going to be real honest that I've researched and read a lot of books, and most of them are good.
Yep.
And some I loved, right? One I loved called Bridging Both Realms. It was John Holland. Phenomenal book, right?
Yeah.
There's been some, Bob Olson's book was a phenomenal book.
Uh-huh.
A lot of them, Mary C. Neal, who was a physician who died, Heaven and Back, phenomenal. Some of them I go through and say, I'm not going to mention them. It's like, I don't get it. Or it's a little wordy, a little dry. And one or two, not many, I go, sounds like BS to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Without being judgmental, right?
Yep. They're there. It's an observation. Yeah.
These books in order, I think, are probably the most important books on the subject if you've lost specifically a child. So get the book. My best friend lost his wife 15 years ago, and he, believe it or not, we grew up together in Buffalo. We met freshman year in high school, Bishop time in 1971. Right? We've been friends for 50 years, right? Inseparable. And this common loss, it was his spouse. Yeah. And they were so close. This common loss has been another level of spiritual bonding for us, right? So it doesn't have, there's an arrogance in me that says it's got to be about your kid, but it's not. It's about somebody you love. So and these are important books, because it's just an Irish guy telling a story,
Well, I think that's what's important. And when I look at the title of the second book, I think about my sons, because, they'll be, when they were younger, they'd be rebuilding an engine with their dad, because we race cars as a family. That's our fun time. But they'd always say, well, wait a minute, Pops. I mean, that Pops is for me, says it all.
But you know what? It's funny.
Connection.
Early on, it was really soon, not long after, I was meeting with the medium in Arizona. And she said, Nancy Meyer's her name. And she said, he's calling you something, but it's not Dad, it's Pip or He's calling me Pops,
Pops.
and and when it's light and fun, he called me Pops. And to this day, when I get messages from him, when it's light, it's Pops. When it's serious, it's Dad.
It's Dad. Yeah.
Hey, Dad. Yeah, you need to know this, Dad.
And that's when it's serious.
It's like stop everything else. Focus. What's going on? It's funny. My little one, Will, who's 22, lives in Boulder, and Will now calls me Pops.
Yep. Well, my boys are 40 and 41, and they're still calling their dad Pops.
Yeah.
Joe, thank you so much for being on today and giving of yourself and time. And Christopher's been standing over your left shoulder and has let you do your thing so eloquently, and just you represent him beautifully, and you represent the other side.
There's two ways I conduct my life now, and it wasn't always that way. Since January 3rd, 2016, two tenets. I live my life to please my God and to make my son proud.
Yeah.
And as long as I follow that, I'm going to be just fine.
It's going to be just awesome. I'm looking forward to having you on again. I hope you will.
Anytime. I enjoyed it.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. This suburb girl. I mean, we can still talk.
Yeah, at least you're from Western New York. You're okay.
Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide. A place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits. But this is not your typical podcast.
And that's what's so critical. What you're thinking is still going inside of your body. Just because you don't say the words doesn't mean that it's not so, because you still think, right? And so we've gotten to the point where, as long as I keep my mouth shut, I'm okay. No, you're not. You're still storing up your body. You are still putting emotions in your body because of your need to be right. And if we have no right or wrong, then what is? And that's all there is, right? It's either energy or it's not. Whether you're speaking the words, whether you're thinking the words, whether you're thinking it, still matters.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet. Enter the world of healing within and adventure inside.